If you're an American that's living in Ireland, or you're an American that's moving to Ireland and you need to know the steps to getting your Irish driving license, this is the video for you. I'm Chelsea. I'm an American living in Ireland, and I'm sharing my experiences, hoping to make somebody else's life easier. It is no secret that the Irish driving process is extremely long. And unfortunately, as an American, it's not as simple as just swapping out your license to the Irish one. You do have to essentially start the process all over again. Now, when you first get here, you are permitted to drive on your American license to up to 1 year, but by then you have to be able to swap it out for the Irish one. And with how long the process is, I do recommend jumping on this sooner rather than later and just trying to get it out of the way. So step one, you're gonna need a PPS number. So your PPS number is gonna be very similar to your social security number. To be able to apply for your PPS number, you are going to need a few things. You're gonna need your US passport, you're going to need proof of residency, and you're also going to need a valid reason of why you're applying for a PPS number. Like getting a driving license, that's a valid reason. So for proof of address, it does need to be dated within the past 3 months, and that can be something like a utility bill, a bank statement, a lease agreement. If you're staying with friends and family, you can even get a utility bill from the homeowner and have them write a note on it saying that you are currently living with them. Application, you go online to mywelfare.ie and then use a MyGovID account to sign in. The MyGovID account you're going to use for everything. Anything that's government related, you need the MyGovID account. So you're going to need that. Without the PPS number, you make a basic account, but then after that, once you get your PPS number, then you can get verified for the full account. Once you go online, you make the appointment, and then you go in person with all your documentation that you need, and they will review it and verify it. They take your picture, and then they send you your PPS card in the mail a few weeks later. So step two, you're gonna go ahead and you are going to study and you are going to take the theory test. You have to do the theory test before you can move on to the next step of applying for your learner's permit. The exam will cover everything from like rules of the road to risk aversion, eco driving, hazard awareness, and just safe driving in general. This is a computer-based test. So you are going to take this in a test center. And some test centers can have longer wait times than others. So I recommend just trying to find something that has the shortest wait time and then going and taking it there. On the exam, you will get 40 questions. They are going to be randomized, and you have to answer at least 35 correct to be able to get a passing score. I recommend using the official testing like study app that's in the App Store. It is, the last time I checked, it's €16.99 for a one-time fee to purchase the app. It is worth every single penny. Every test question, every answer, the test format, exactly like it is when you go and you take the theory test in person. And so it's a great resource to just be able to use to study and practice for the exam. Step three, you'll need an Eyesight and or medical report. Not everybody needs a medical report. So medical reports are only going to be required for certain conditions. So I have linked it below, which will explain which conditions might need a medical report. Everybody that's applying for a first-time learner's permit does need an Eyesight report. So you will just make an appointment and go in somewhere like Specsavers or something similar and get your Eyesight report done. You basically tell them you're here for the driving test Eyesight report, and it's a very specific one. They give you that report, and then you're going to submit it with your permit application. And then step four, you are going to submit that permit application. So for the application, first of all, you're going to need to have passed your theory test. You're going to need your PPS number. You're going to need proof of residency, and you're going to need the completed Eyesight report, and if necessary, the medical report as well. Once it's approved, they will send you your learner's permit in the mail. And then once you have your learner's permit, that takes precedence over your American license. So you have to follow the rules of the learner's permit. That includes displaying L plates while driving, not being able to drive on the motorways, and not being able to drive without a fully licensed driver in the vehicle with you. Unfortunately, this is very difficult for a lot of Americans that move over, especially if your spouse is in a similar situation and they don't have a license either, or they're starting to go through the same process. but it is what it is. Step 5, once you have your permit, you want to apply for your reduced EDT. So all learner drivers have to go through 12 driving lessons, which are also known as essential driving training or EDT. Learner drivers also have to hold their permit for a period of 6 months before you can apply to sit for the test. However, by holding a foreign license for a period of more than 2 years, you are eligible for reduced EDT. So instead of the typical 12, you only have to do 6. You also don't have to hold your permit for a full 6 months. Once you complete your EDT, you can apply to sit for your test. So you will print out the application, fill it out, and send it in to the RSA. And with your application, you have to send color copies of your American license as well as a letter of entitlement. Now that might sound a little bit confusing, but it's really not. You just need to get a copy of your DMV record from your home state. For California, I was able to just go online and order that. I think I only paid like $1 and then printed it and sent it along with the application. Once the application is accepted, you will receive a letter in the mail saying that you've been granted a reduced EDT as well as had the 6-month waiting period waived. That letter you need to take and give it to your driving instructor when you first start your lesson so they know that you've been approved for only the 6. Step 6, you want to find a local driving instructor and start your training. And this one might feel, especially if you've been driving for a really long time, it will feel a little bit silly starting to do the lessons all over again. However, they are very beneficial. There's a lot of rules and just things that are very unique to Ireland that we might not be used to experiencing in the States. One of the things is roundabouts. They're not common. So for me, not knowing the different where to position yourself in the roundabout and exactly like the protocol of following around the roundabout, it was a huge help of like clarifying all of that. I do highly recommend finding an instructor in the area that you plan on taking the test. The instructors are all very knowledgeable about the different test routes and just like little kind of quirky little things in the areas that might trip you up on a test if the instructor or if the examiner takes you on that route. I also highly recommend booking a mock test right before you sit for your actual test. So your instructor can go through and pick apart any kind of small little bad habits that you may have so that you can be hyper aware of them when you go sit down and you actually do take your test. And one thing to note is when you take your test, you can either take it in an automatic or a manual. Whichever one you take it in, you should really be taking your lessons in that. So if you plan on taking it in a manual, take your lessons in a manual. If you plan on taking it in an automatic, take it in an automatic. If you take your driving test in an automatic, then you are only licensed to drive an automatic. You are not licensed to drive a manual. If you take it in a manual, you are licensed to drive either types of transmission. So just something to think about and something to know. Myself, I do not know how to drive a manual. I can't drive a manual. I didn't really want to learn. I have no desire. So I was fine with just taking it in an automatic. But if you do plan on driving a manual, you have to take it in a manual. Step 7 is you are going to book your practical exam. Once you finish all 6 of your driving lessons, your instructor will have uploaded them into the system and you will be eligible to apply for your exam. Once you apply, you are placed on a waiting list and you just have to sit and wait for them to email you saying you've been invited to sit for the exam. This can take a long time. Some test centers have an extremely long wait time. Others can be a little bit quicker, but on average, expect to wait anywhere from like 3 to 4 months, if not a little bit longer, depending on your test center. At the end of the exam, the examiner will tell you if you've passed or failed, and they will also go through all of the points that they had marked you on. So if you do fail, you know exactly what you need to work on for the next round. Also, something to note, pass rates are pretty low in Ireland compared to, I think, in America for sure. So if you do fail, try not to get too discouraged and just book it again and sit again and maybe even do another lesson with your instructor with the feedback that you received from the examiner. Now, if you do pass, they hand you a certificate of competency and you can then go online and apply for your license. Which brings us to step 8, which apply for your license online. May need to upload an eyesight report or a medical exam again if necessary, or you may need to upload proof of residency if you have moved and have not updated it yet. And then once your application is approved, they will send your new license in the mail and you are officially licensed to drive. You will be now considered a novice driver and have to display end plates for 2 years, and you cannot be the accompanying driver for a learner driver until you are no longer a novice. And that is it. That is all it takes. Your license in Ireland, like I said, it is a very long process. It's very drawn out. I do think there are some changes that need to be made, especially with people that are fully licensed drivers and have been for an extremely long time, when they're coming over here and trying to switch things out. I definitely agree. And having to do the theory test, having to sit for the test, having to take the lessons, but it is very difficult when you were used to driving by yourself and unaccompanied, and then all of a sudden you can no longer do that as a learner driver. But I hope this helps somebody else going through the same process again. I've linked everything below. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment and like and subscribe for more.